23 tourist attractions humans might ruin forever. Hey everyone, it's Alexa again, and welcome back to Titanic. Travel has become so much easier for us, meaning it's a breeze for tourists to hop on a plane and visit the world's most exotic locations. With the ever-increasing number of travelers, the damage that is happening is frightening. Before we get into today's video, make sure that you're subscribed and ring the bell so that you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Antarctica. This chilly location tops the bucket list of many, and a trip here would never be forgotten. Unfortunately, it might be remembered for all the wrong reasons. Once you've made the arduous journey to this picture-perfect spot, you'll soon realize that the photos don't quite match up. With the increasing number of tourists, pollution is on the rise. There are remnants of oil spills, and wildlife numbers are dwindling. The only way to ensure that this beautiful area remains unscathed is to limit the number of tourists that can visit. Mount Everest. A trip to the highest mountain in the world would certainly be memorable, but for decades it's become a bit of a dumping ground. Already in 1963, a climber noted in an article he wrote for National Geographic that Mount Everest was the highest junkyard on the face of the Earth. It's littered with packaging, broken gear, empty oxygen bottles, discarded tents, and human excrement. In 2016, the UN reported that there were over 140,000 kilograms or 308,000 pounds of trash scattered across Mount Everest. Annual cleanups have since been organized, with the last cleanup removing 15 tons of rubbish, 13,000 pounds of human excrement, and a few bodies too. Venice, Italy. It's no secret that Venice is slowly sinking. Now add masses of tourists every single day, and think of what damage is being caused. The locals are super unhappy with the number of visitors Venice receives daily, stating that it brings their pollution levels through the roof. There are already strict rules in place for tourists, which include a zero tolerance on littering, no horseplay, shirts must always be worn in public, love locks are prohibited, and damaging any property is a criminal offense. Taj Mahal, India. On a busy tourist day, up to 70,000 people will wander through this architectural marvel in India. Officials are in the process of limiting these numbers to 40,000 a day because, with all the millions of visitors each year, the Agra city has become so polluted that there is now a yellow tinge to the usually milky white structure. Ladakh, India. In the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir, you'll find one of the most beautiful spots in the world, Ladakh. This high-altitude desert has had an influx of tourists thanks to the film 3 Idiots, which is causing a major problem for the area. The amount of litter in the area is said to be horrific, with roughly 30,000 plastic bottles being discarded daily. Dubrovnik, Croatia. We can credit Game of Thrones for the increased popularity of vacationing in Dubrovnik, Croatia. After the series was released, tourism increased by 10%. Over-tourism in the area can not only be blamed on the hit TV show, but also on the very cheap flights that head there too. The problem with over-tourism is that it drives the locals out, and the feeling of being in authentic Dubrovnik is gone quickly. The mayor plans to reduce the number of tourists allowed in the city within 2 years. Great Barrier Reef. Home to scores of marine lives, the world's largest coral reef ecosystem is under serious threat. Scientists believe that by 2050, there's a good chance that it won't even be around anymore. The main threat to this delicate ecosystem is climate change, and already drastic measures have been put in place to prevent an environmental disaster. Phi Phi Islands, Thailand. If you've seen images of Phi Phi Islands and then headed there for yourself, you'll know that the reality and the postcard version are slightly different. It's overcrowded, noisy, and strewn with rubbish. Fortunately, the Phi Phi Island Conservation and Prevention Team have been doing cleanup operations on the islands since 2015. Reykjavik, Iceland. Very much like Dubrovnik that we mentioned earlier, flights to Reykjavik, Iceland are becoming cheaper, and Iceland overall has seen a huge boon in tourists. 1.26 million people visited Iceland in 2015, which is crazy if you consider the population is only 330,000. The American tourists surpassed the local population back in 2016. One local politician says the influx of tourists has the place resembling Disneyland. The tourists do boost the local economy, but the downside is that the local prices are increased and local infrastructure is on the rise, so there's construction everywhere. Great Wall of China. The first walls went up sometime during the 7th century BC, and today around 2/3 of the wall has been destroyed by tourists, local development, and erosion. Illegal mining was the cause of the first part of the Great Wall collapsing. Large portions are covered in graffiti, and pieces have been used in pigsties. Many parts of the wall have been described as mounds of dirt because overgrazing has sped up the desertification of the country, and sandstorms have become the norm, resulting in huge stretches of wall resembling mounds of dirt. Plenty of money has been set aside to ensure the longevity of the wall, but many believe that's not the problem, and the best way forward is removing all the mines. Hopefully, it remains one of the new 7 wonders of the world. Angkor Wat, Cambodia. When you think of Cambodia, one of the first places that probably springs to mind is Angkor Wat, one of the largest religious monuments in the world. 2.1 million people descended on the monument last year, generating $60 million in ticket sales. Heading there is a competition for space, when you're rivaling with the tourist next to you, behind you, and in front of you for the best shot. Air pollution and germs brought in by the tourists are affecting the delicate structures. Couple that with nature, and it's a possibility that Angkor Wat may not be around forever. Cozumel, Mexico. This undeveloped island is surrounded by the Caribbean Sea and has gained a lot of popularity with cruise ships. According to the BBC, it's the second most popular cruise ship destination in the world, and you know what that means. Humans are responsible for damaging the natural environment. Large portions of coral reef have been destroyed by divers and boats, and the heavy boat traffic has brought in high levels of pollution. Bali, Indonesia. Instagram images of Bali are always gorgeous, but they don't highlight the behind-the-scenes damage left by the thousands of tourists that flock there daily. Bali is filled with litter, traffic is terrible, the roads are in serious need of work, and jungles are being replaced by billboards. It's busy, noisy, and touristy to the point of being gimmicky, and Bali has sadly lost a lot of what made it a top tourist spot to begin with. Sistine Chapel, Vatican City. It's common knowledge that a visit to the Sistine Chapel means absolutely no flash photography. It took Michelangelo 4 years to paint this masterpiece, and it's taking millions of tourists a few seconds to destroy it. Combine the banned flash photography with the carbon dioxide we're all breathing out, and it's a recipe for disaster. A new heating and cooling system was introduced to try and combat this, and there are also limits to the number of people allowed in the chapel at one time. Barcelona, Spain. A trip to Barcelona will quickly enforce what we're about to say. The locals are not that keen on tourists, to the point that there have been protests against tourism in the city. Certain popular attractions have put rules in place only allowing a certain number of tourists to visit per day. Tourists tend to conglomerate, causing massive disruptions in the city, making it difficult for vendors to make a living and for the locals to go about their daily business. The Parthenon, Athens. This crumbling temple has stood upon this hill in Athens since between 438 and 437 BCE. It was originally built for the goddess Athena. It later served as a church and finally a mosque. Now it serves as a canvas for budding artists around the globe who like to visit this ancient spot and draw on the remaining pillars. Tourists would also steal the rocks from the area, which is now strictly forbidden. There are huge fines in place if you are caught taking rocks or drawing on the Parthenon. Caves of Altamira, Spain. These exquisite caves were open to the public for a long time, where tourists could go and view the drawings of bison hidden inside. Sadly, with the constant flow of people, the 20,000-year-old Paleolithic paintings were damaged. The site was closed to the public in 2002. The caves have since been partially reopened, but only 5 visitors can enter the caves, and those 5 people are chosen at random. Rome, Italy. Rome is a stunning city to visit, and it's filled with ancient ruins to explore. Tourists, however, have taken exploring to mean other things, as opposed to just looking at the sights with their eyes. In August of 2017, a tourist from Ecuador was caught red-handed carving his name into the Colosseum. His punishment? A fine in the region of $23,000. Big Major Key, Bahamas. The swimming pigs are a major draw card to this island, and they're the cutest things to see swimming in the water. Well, at least they were. They're dying, thanks to tourists who are feeding them the incorrect foods and plying them with beer and rum. The rowdy tourists have also been trying to ride these poor creatures. The government are currently working on drastic measures to ensure this terrible trend does not continue. Cuba, North America. Cuba has seen record numbers of tourists of late, with 2017 being a record year where 4.1 million visitors headed headed to this island nation. Travel to Cuba for Americans was banned for a long time, and when the ban was lifted, the numbers shot up. The big problem with the increased numbers is that there was a food shortage for the locals, and what was available would cost the locals an arm and a leg. Government has imposed price caps on essentials so that the locals can still afford them. Stonehenge, United Kingdom. Roughly 1.5 million people pay a visit to Stonehenge each year, and the verdict is still out as to how exactly the stones got there in the first place. Aliens, angels, or man, regardless of what you believe, a fact is that tourists destroyed this incredible piece of history by chipping away at pieces of the stones. And when the stones were restored, they were restored to be aesthetically pleasing as opposed to their true structure. Maasai Mara, Kenya. This is one of the most famous game reserves in the world, and here you'll encounter lions, elephants, zebra, hippos, cheetahs, leopards, and wildebeest. Imagine going there and not seeing any of these magnificent animals. That horrible thought could be a reality if the large numbers of tourists don't start decreasing soon. With the high numbers, the pressure on the area's resources is extreme. There is pressure on government now to cap the number of visitors because although it's great for the economy now, when the animals are gone, there will be no tourists coming at all. Have you guys ever visited any of these tourist attractions? Or if you could choose one to see now, where would you go? Share your experiences with us in the comments below. Jaisalmer, India. This city has been around since medieval times, and over the past decade, tourism has quadrupled. The ancient site is just not equipped to handle that many people, and with the outdated sewage system in place, there's often smelly water seeping through the pavements. At this stage, though, there are no plans in place to curb the number of visitors, but it could be only a matter of time.